Welcome to the Nordic Mythology podcast. I'm Daniel Farrand of the company Horns of Odin. As always, before we jump into the show, I do have to plug our Patreon. I say it every week, but it is the lifeline of the show. It's how we keep going week in, week out, and we literally couldn't make the podcast without the Patreon. So if you can, head over to Patreon/Nordic Mythology podcast. You get the entire back catalogue. So I think there's about 300 plus episodes that aren't available anywhere else. You can only get them via our Patreon with some incredible guests. You also get the bonus episode we do with our guests each week in the form of a short Q&A. Sometimes they last half an hour, sometimes they last another hour plus. So if you like an episode, there is that bumper part on the Patreon. So just go and check those out. There's a ton at this point, and you get access to them all as soon as you sign up. It starts from £3 a month, literally cheaper than buying a coffee. Coffee's expensive these days. So if you can, head over to Patreon/Nordic Mythology podcast. If not, 5-star rating, positive review wherever you get your podcasts, or just on YouTube, even as simple as a subscribe on YouTube so you get notified when we put episodes out, when we're recording live, and when we put little videos on there, clips. It all helps new people find us. But with that said, let's get into today's show. First, I'm going to introduce my lovely co-host and in-house archaeologist, Mags Havgar.
Hello, everyone.
There we go. That's nice and short.
I tried.
And okay, and super excited for these two guests. This project that they've been working on is stunning, and it's such a pleasure to have a flick through. So our guests today are Kevin Alexandrowicz. Is that right?
That's good.
Alexandrowicz?
Good, man.
Close enough.
Yeah.
And Devon Rawlings. So Kevin is a multimedia artist focused on the natural world and how people relate to the past and present. And Devon is a performer, writer, and clothing maker. Her passion for researching historical textiles and folk customs takes shape in her living history hobby, as well as creating immersive events. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. So your book, Earth Wounds, is what we're here to discuss.
Such a cool title.
Yeah, it is. So I guess the whole title is Earth Wounds, Creative Explorations of Viking Age Funerary Customs.
Oof.
Bit of a mouthful.
No, but that's what the subtitle is for, right? It's kind of expand. You can have like a cool, short, kind of catchy actual title, and then like the subtitle kind of expands.
Yeah. What do you think? Earth Wounds. Does that say grave to you?
I mean, the thing is, when I first just saw Earth Wounds, I was like, that is so fucking cool. And then I read the subtitle, and I was like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, that really makes sense. Because, burials could be wounds in the earth. You were literally, puncturing it.
Yeah, I think for me, what comes to mind is the idea of our destruction of the planet. First off, is the Earth Wounds. That's what I think of, whether it's through climate change or umpteen other things that we like to do to the Earth. That's what strikes. But obviously, we are talking about graves, which is is it the old is it kenning for grave?
Yep.
Oh, it's a kenning for grave.
Yeah.
I that.
Pulled that off of that one. What is that website called? Skaldic something.
Oh yeah, I think I know what you're talking about.
I know the one.
Because I recently learned, unbeknownst to me, there is besides that website, if I am not misremembering, there isn't one kind of collected space for all known kennings. And I just went, wait, what?
Yeah.
I think it's just skaldic.org, is it?
It could just be that one, yeah.
We're thinking of.
It's been
I know the one you mean.
Yeah, that is something that we noticed as well, along with other things in this book. But in the book, kind of early on, there are a few pages dedicated to other grave or death-related kennings. Could maybe even say a couple, but perhaps I should talk about the book a little bit first and just who helped us make it and whatnot. Hilder, shout out Hilder. These guys are so wonderful, and they're based in the Pacific Northwest, and they helped us so much shape this book to have even more information than we could really organize ourselves. But Joseph and Lauren both really helped beef it out with some interesting things like these kennings. And let's see, where are the kennings in my book? But other death-related ones. One of my favorite ones that's in Beowulf is Bone House for skeleton. Such a creative way to describe it.
Yeah. So I guess before we get to the kennings, what is the book? What is, obviously we kind of jumped into Earth Wounds is a kenning for grave, but what is this book? Because it's not just, I feel like it's deeper than just a book. It's a project. It's a thought-provoking experience. It's visually stunning. I don't know who took the photos, but the photography is gorgeous, Kevin. Like that, it is really an artistic piece.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the idea is to have an accessible guide that's visually appealing and scientifically, archaeologically sound. It reflects the material culture of the time, and it's not necessarily myth busting or anything, but something that, like, yeah, it's a bit of a contemplation on death, but also like a glimpse inside of this world, like mainly focusing on pagan burials, but we do include a few Christian ones. But yeah, just a visual guide.
I would say the book really started with our intention to make something beautiful at first. It started as a photo project, really, but to do that, so much research went into it to make something that we felt could be, result in impactful photos that show just our interpretation of some of these early medieval graves. And in doing that, we realized how emotional it is, how interesting it is, how evocative it is. And so thank you for your compliments, because we feel proud to create something that hopefully has that effect. But yeah, what started as an idea for just some photos, we were doing it together. Kevin wanted to get started on recreating a grave and took his own photos. He's a great photographer already. And then I was like, I need to get in on this. You're making such beautiful work. I would really like to participate. And then we just made a few more, learned about the process of even taking them, because it's kind of a logistical feat to even take these photos. And you can talk more about that, Kevin. But yeah, it kind of started as a photography book, but then we had so much information that we researched to make it happen. And then it was like, okay, well, I guess we have to write some words now to go along with these photos.
Yeah, it seems though it became, I say, it's something that you're going to contemplate over, because it's the recreation of different burials. I know you say that they're not all of them are 100% accurate. It's that borderline. Does it class as, Max, you can help with this, does it class as experimental archaeology? I guess so, because you
would say so.
I feel
when
like
it comes to what is experimental archaeology, I think entirely depends on the person you're talking to, whether or not, because, when it comes to like this terminology discussions within a field or discipline, is like everyone has different opinions. But personally, I think this definitely counts as experimental archaeology, because it is something about like actually experimenting with how would this work in practice, what would it look like, what do we have to do to try to recreate this thing. So yeah, I mean, besides that, I hope that you guys didn't actually bury anyone, which I assume you didn't.
No dirt covered anybody. Yeah, but
it looks like some rocks did though.
Yeah,
I think the most
pretty heavy
thing we got about it was putting rocks on people, putting a shroud around someone, and there are definitely some silly moments doing those things, but I was kind of captain safety and trying to make sure that we're doing everything legit.
Okay.
But we're trying to be the most kind to our models, but then at the same time, Kevin is like standing on one foot on this super tall ladder, like overhead. I'm hanging onto one of his legs, trying to keep him from falling. Like it was kind of a crazy setup to get these photos, but in the doing of those poses and we're trying to achieve a range of skeletal positions, and in the doing of these different burial types, we did learn a lot about what it might have felt like to dig a grave, to place heavy stones on someone, and to wrap someone up. And it's interesting to go into that with the interest of creating a photo that is hopefully portrays something of history, but then you also realize just the emotional effect that has on you.
Yeah, I'm sure you had to have had some emotional experiences whilst doing this, because I guess for anybody that hasn't seen the book at all, you've taken, or either of your Instagrams or anything to do with it, you've taken grave finds and the position of the skeleton, the position of the goods, and then recreated it as it may have looked the moment of the burial. So with the burial mound open, with the items placed around, the body still intact, obviously, because you're using actual live models. But so it's recreated what it could have looked like that moment they were put in to the earth wound, which is a fascinating project because you're playing with a very emotional situation that you're kind of getting the feel for burying someone. I guess you've got all the stuff around and the equipment and the ladder and the jeopardy of almost falling in yeah, but there still has to be that kind of ritualistic feel of putting this person in there and placing their body how it would look, and the rocks on them or the basket of goods.
Yeah, I think it's a testament to how impactful all of that is, that despite having the ladders and everything else around it, it was not that hard to feel compelled to be in the moment and appreciate it for what we really were doing and interacting with, which is history and real people that were once walking on this earth that we're now walking on. And I think that was a fact that we never really forgot throughout the whole process. But at the same time, I think it's kind of beautiful to appreciate the silly moments that we had as well, because in making this book, we spent a lot of time contemplating death, as I'm sure archaeologists do and historians do. Yeah, and it does something to you to contemplate that so much. And I think us in the just world we live in right now, we're all doing that. And the topic makes people feel kind of awkward, or it feels fatiguing, or it feels emotional. And there are always moments for humor to shine through, or to find ways to connect with people through laughter. And things like that are some of the many takeaways I had from the project and doing it, which we didn't go into it expecting these kind of contemplations, but they just happen.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm a pretty irreverent person just in general, like kind of my personality, I'm just a little bit goofy, but this definitely like really made me feel things deeply. And I like didn't expect to be transformed by it a little bit, but I think I was. And like each of these models were in the ground for like minimum 30 minutes, probably 30 minutes to an hour and a half, something like that. And like, just like, they're just like playing dead, not moving. And we're like, don't breathe. Like adjusting their hair or like adjusting like all these little bits around them. And they're like really just completely still. It's like, it's even when there's people chattering and lots of moving pieces, it's still really emotional. And that's like, I'm glad that comes through, because when I was reading some one of Leszek's many articles a couple years ago, I stumbled on the painter that he employs to have these graves illustrated. And there's one from Birka, and she's like missing the lower part of her jawbone. And it's just such an emotional, impactful image. And I was like, I want to do something like this and like use real people. So we just we made the book that we wanted to read. And also to your point earlier, Mags, like the definitions thing with like when we're talking about experimental archaeology, this is what I was coming into when I was like looking at even burial positions. So I was like, there's not like one straight answer for any of these things. And they like to go as in-depth as possible. But if you're like somebody who's not a professional like me, I just kind of want to know what's the gist, like what is supine or what is flexed or crouched or contracted, that sort of thing, that sliding scale of what a body can do in a grave. And so we were like, let's just illustrate these things. That was our starting point. It obviously grew to way more than that, but yeah.
Was there anything that jumped out when trying to, I guess it's tough because the models, I assume the models probably weren't playing dead whilst you had to put them in these positions, because I wonder whether that would have been an interesting thing, was trying to put somebody in that sitting position if they weren't actually moving and willing to sit in there, and what could be learned from even just that act of like, oh well, we've got to now sit this person up. What goes into that with a body? Because I mean, thankfully most people have never had to move a body, but it's not like moving the equivalent, let's say, weight on a bar. It's a very different thing when it's kind of
awkward.
Awkward. Yeah, exactly. So I'd be interested to know what, like, if you learn anything that. Yeah. I'm sure there's loads of funny moments in old historical burials, that gallows humor, that when they were moving someone and someone fell in the grave with them. I'm sure that's happened tons of times.
And like an arm will move back. Like you're like, no, it'd be better if you were hugging the sword like this and your arm just does this again. It's like,
yeah.
Well, we did learn something about the positions just in trying to, like, we're looking at original photos of archaeological digs or original illustrations during the exploration, or during the excavation. And seeing a sketch is one thing of just how the bones are laid out, but that's how the bones are laid out after 1,000 years of being in the ground, and who knows what kind of other external factors had in moving the bones, whether it's animals or just decomposition or soil movement. So trying to figure out how to recreate that, but with a new or a living body or a recently deceased body, it did kind of show us like, okay, maybe there is some difference in some of these digs or some of these graves, that what we see in the illustration might not be how the person was laid down. It's hard to tell with so many of these things, but if someone's arm has drifted over a little bit that way, it might have just been dust settling as opposed to like specifically posing them in that way. But yeah, laying our friends' living bodies in the ground did show us something about how bodies want to physically move. And then when we had our friends like be weightless and just not try to tense any muscles or anything, we did get to observe like, okay, so that's what it looks like. And yeah, looking at all these positions of supine or prone or crouched on the side or sitting upright, it is interesting to see what that looks like in the real living flesh, and then how it settles once the muscles relax.
So for the uninitiated, what would all those different positions be? Like supine, for example. What does that mean?
We can pull up some graves. I have
so go watch this on YouTube, guys.
Yeah. Devon,
So
you can say, and I'll pull up the graves.
Yeah, in making this book, as Kevin said, we wanted a nice, easy reference guide for all these common skeletal positions, and it just was impossible. I don't know what other people might find when they Google it, but if you look up like archaeological skeletal positions, I could not find something that just like actually demonstrated all of them in an easy to digest way. So we wanted to create that. So first off, to just dive into it, there's supine or prone, and supine is laying on your back, kind of heaven towards the star, or face towards the heavens, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of like if you're laying on your back in your bed, kind of thing.
Yeah. So
That's
Yeah, I think that's like
definitions.
that's like the image you think of as
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
If you think of somebody in a coffin today, that it's
Here's
that
Here's a fun little aside. My grandma used to sleep like that, so the entire family was always like,
Like a
"She died yet,
vampire.
or is she asleep?" And she was
Oh.
always asleep.
well, thankfully.
And when she actually died, apparently according to my dad, she had she fought death. But it was just funny because like our entire family was like you couldn't tell that she was breathing. She was just laying on her back with her arms folded across her chest, and we're like, "Do you go away when you sleep and then you come back to us, or what's happening?"
yeah, she's just rehearsing.
Yeah,
Oh,
she's
no.
But sorry, Devin, continue. Sorry.
Well, you want me to just read the definition that we put in here?
Yeah, so yeah, you could definitely do that. So we put together a list of these positions, and Kevin, not only being a great photographer, made amazing illustrations. He's an incredible artist as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there are these skeletal positions that he's drawn to accompany all the definitions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we put in 6. Supine position, so body laid on back, facing up. And we really condensed these down just to be really really succinct. Flex position, body laid with one or more limbs bent at an angle. Crouched position, body laid typically on its side, with knees bent towards chest about halfway, angle between the torso and thighs between 45 and 90 degrees. Contracted position, body laid typically on its side, with knees bent towards the chest more acutely than halfway. Think fetal position. Seated position, body sitting, possibly leaning against a chest, shield, or other objects. Legs may be extended. And then prone position, body laid on front side, facing down. And these accompany some images that I drew just to better illustrate what we're actually talking about. And then you can look at the graves that we took photographs of and kind of see for yourself what that looks like in real life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
this is not exhaustive, but the most common positions that you typically see.
Am I allowed to pull those pictures up on a screen?
Yeah.
I didn't want to share anything that
do it.
Wasn't allowed, and the people
can be better than me doing
it. So I got to the position. So that's this here supine, which is the one that, like I said, we all know very well and familiar with. The
crouch,
flexed.
No, that's flexed. Sorry.
So that's just almost it's
Immediate
almost like
fail.
you're sitting. It's like you're sitting. Say you're sitting, but laid down. If that makes sense. It's like you would be sat on a seat, but laid on your back or side.
I get what you're saying. Then it makes sense to you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
That's crouched.
Crunched.
Yeah.
So crouched as in like crouching, or crunched as in
crouched. I can't read.
You just read it as crunched. But honestly, with it this small, it does look like crunched.
Yeah, but I've got it bigger. So you can't get me out of it that easy. I've actually got it big. I just wrote it wrong. I appreciate it.
On that note, though, just speaking of crunched, if you guys would allow me to be just like slightly morbid, talking about death
in this conversation,
I don't know, just weird how that happens. Because something that hit me while we were talking about, your experiences with, kind of articulating the limbs of your friends and moving their bodies about, like when they tried to be just kind of relaxed and not tensing or moving at all. This like occurs to me from time to time. My point being, considering all of these different positions, how did that work when you bring rigor mortis into the picture?
Yeah, I've thought about this as well.
Yeah. Because I don't have an answer for you, but I'm like, speaking of crunched, did they literally have to like crunch people into these positions?
I'm hoping Kevin's going to give the answer that I think is the
I'm
answer.
sure we probably all thought about it, but I have, in my experience, I've eaten a lot of roadkill. And so you're looking at the rigor mortis, like the deer, and you're like, oh, like you know that it's been a certain amount of time, and then it relaxes again after 24 hours. So,
yeah, that's what I thought.
Okay, yeah.
I think that,
Right.
Yeah,
that's
it doesn't last long.
yeah, I think that's a
I
misconception.
tried to Google it quickly, but I couldn't really find a straight answer. But 20. Well, okay. Well, then
it might not be
I-
24, but something.
It typically
like that.
sets in. I mean, I think I have this right. It typically sets in within like 3 to 8 hours, depending on the person or the creature, and then within 24 hours, sometimes longer, there's the muscles relax again.
Right, of course. Well, then all the different positions also make sense then, because I'm just speculating here, but it seems to me, considering all these different burial variations and the amount of effort that goes into it, that I assume that most burials wouldn't, you wouldn't probably be done with it within 24 hours.
That's what I was going to say next.
Yeah,
you work on the Oceanberg ship, so you know that was probably like a process, like over maybe even a month, right?
Yeah. So when it comes to the experimental archaeology bit of this, we did not dig graves that were actually deep enough to house a body. Otherwise, it would have been really difficult to photograph and actually show the body. So that's something that I suppose you could call a little Hollywood magic. But even just digging these shallow graves, it took hours. It like really takes a long time, which is something else that we found interesting to learn about. Of course, we don't do this every day in our lives, so someone else that is more experienced would go faster. But whether it's digging out the dirt or laying stones for a stone-lined burial, or in some cases having a tree trunk coffin burial or a wooden casket, these things do take time to prepare, and it's hard to know how many of these graves had their preparations all ready to go before the actual death of the person versus after. But yeah, it's something to think about.
Especially considering that I assume that you guys used metal shovels.
We did use that.
So not criticizing, but at all, because I've tried digging with what the Vikings had, and I don't recommend it because they didn't have metal shovels; they only had wooden shovels.
Yeah, wooden
so
shovels.
And then when you bring that into the picture, even though perhaps they were kind of
tips on the shovels, though, like a little.
That
sometimes and it might be later in the period.
That depends.
Might be more,
Yeah, I think it depends on when in the Viking Age you're talking about. The reason that I bring it up is just because I was involved just adjacently to this audiovisual project way back when at the Viking Ship Museum here in Oslo, and the professor in charge of the exhibit, Jan Bill, he made a point to the filmmakers that you have to change the sound effect for the shovels because they're giving off a metallic clang, and that is not historically accurate.
Nice.
I've seen those shovels. Yeah. They have a little part on the side where your foot can go down onto it. I think some of them did, at least.
Yeah, some did. I mean, I guess they had 100 different ways of making shovels, but I think that's interesting too. That I assume it would take a long time to dig a grave, regardless of how small it was.
Our soil in where we dug these graves is really, really gravelly as well. So some of these took so much longer. We tore up our friends' yards, like lawns, went into the woods, dug tree roots out. So, because is that 4 different graves maybe that we dug? Yeah, it was an interesting experiment. We definitely used like Maddox, like picks and stuff to work on it, and I had a lot of friends helping me dig.
Did you get any strange looks from passers-by?
The nice thing about where we were doing this is we don't really have neighbors. So like we all have we were lucky enough to live on properties where we just have woods and nobody else around them. That's where we did all these graves. Yeah.
Okay.
It'd be a different story if I was doing it here in Scotland.
Yeah. You didn't have the police just come in and be like,
yeah.
What are you doing? Like, well, actually, we're just pretending.
It's
we're
art.
Playing graves. It's not real.
That's funny because me and Devon are talking about making a few more photos for like to promote the book in the next few weeks, and I'm just thinking about like doing all this stuff and all that. There are going to be people around this time if we do this.
If you need a model, I would happily lay still for you and just pretend. But it may open.
You can
may open the whole tattoo debate. If you
I mean, I'll enlist. You can cover up all my tattoos.
Great. Yeah. We did a lot of covering up of tattoos as well, didn't we? Like combination of clothes and makeup, I think, because most of our friends have a lot of tattoos. Of course. Yeah. Nice. I mean, like me, you can't tell that there's any tattoos on me, but like my arms are all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. I think, Devin, you don't have any tattoos, though. That's why we photographed you so much.
Not yet, until I go to maybe the Beercode Tattoo Festival. Then we'll see.
Yeah.
I'll come back covered.
Yeah, that's a place to definitely get some. So even the act of digging these graves, what was that like? Because even though it's not a real grave, I assume there is still some depth and feeling to it. Even though, I don't know. I feel, even just, I mean, digging is hard. Anyone that's ever had to dig anything, it's actually really difficult. Like
a lot of swearing.
I have all the credit to people who used to just dig by hand, metal or wooden shovel. It is tough. And so you have that, but also in the back of your mind, you know you're digging a grave, but you know you're not really digging a grave. But I imagine there's still a subconsciousness there that's like, this is quite weird.
Yeah, I think it's a quite weird thing to do with your friends by your own choice for fun or for artistic purposes. Like, we're so lucky to be doing it for those reasons and not more tragic reasons. But it makes you appreciate the reality of it for those that have done that in the past and continue to do it today. And I think the digging of the soil was an interesting feeling of it. And also just seeing your friends laying there and then the placing of the objects in the graves. We can't know exactly what people were feeling or thinking in the past, but just the act of doing that gives you so much more of an appreciation, I think, for everything that goes into making those graves and the skills that are involved of making these burials happen in the past. Like nowadays, there's so many conveniences where you don't really need to be so involved. You can if you want. It's to your own level of comfort and desire. But modern burials, oftentimes that we associate with like a typical modern casket burial or cremation burial, you might not actually have too much interaction with the process of it, and maybe
it's almost all outsourced now that I try to think about all the steps.
Yeah, it is, or it can be, and that's definitely the kind of process that I was introduced to as early in my life, and it's one that still comes up with my family members as they do meet their time. The initial response is to outsource the labor, and I've had some other experiences in the past recent years to be able to interact differently with family or pets and choose a more integrative process where I have more of a relationship to it. But yeah, I would assume in the past 1,000 years ago, people were just much more immersed in the process and placing items that they made with their own hands that would take hours to create into the graves to stay with their loved ones forever. Or just, maybe there's a skilled craftsperson that you would outsource back then, but it's still, there's so much more familiarity to it. And I think that is something that a lot of people have lost nowadays that they would maybe benefit from if they could have that relationship to not only the life lived, but also how we treat the dead. So that was just another contemplation coming out of this book, and maybe something that other people can think about when they read the book and when they sit with it for a while, is thinking about, not that we need more reasons to think about tragedies today, but it's still worth it. It's kind of an interesting thought experiment of how you would deal with your own, or maybe you talk to your loved ones while they're still alive and encourage those kinds of conversations to make sure that we get to have meaning in that part of our life as much as the living part.
No, but I think that's such a good point, Devon, because at the risk of sounding like I'm kind of challenging, like that's not what I mean to do by saying this, but I do also kind of think that, like, yes, of course death is tragic, but at the same time, to get a bit philosophical here, death is like kind of the one inevitable thing that we all will experience happening to people around us, and that will eventually happen to us. So it is kind of weird that it's such a distant thing in a way. Because what you said now kind of reminded me of the fact that when I was younger, I used to talk to my dad about this a lot. Both of my parents are priests, but when they were students, my dad worked for a funeral home. And the way that he spoke about death was very different to a lot of other people that I knew, because he was used to handling the bodies, washing them, putting them in the caskets, driving them. Like him and his brothers, at least one of his other brothers, he's a nurse and has also worked for a funeral home. And when my dad and my uncle get going, they have the most casual, relaxed, no nonsense approach to death, which is just, it's so comfortable to be around.
My best friend worked for a morgue and did that exact same job. And yeah, Tessa had
great stories
so
coming
many
out.
Stories. And yeah, it's pretty incredible how your relationship to it can change when you're more familiar with it. By choice, of job or by tragedy. But yeah, it's interesting. And I really hope that this book can get people thinking about, more the process of how they might like to be treated or treat other people. But certainly in making this book and actually depicting it with pictures, which we're not the first reenactors to do this. There are other people that have made some amazing grave recreations, but we're just trying to make a nice collection of them where you can kind of cross-reference different positions or grave types just for the sake of learning more about it. But yeah, we just, you can't help thinking so much more about the actual person that was alive. And there's so much assuming that we're going to do as our imagination fills in all the colors of this pretty dry, vague picture that we have. But it's, I think, a really important exercise if you're interested in history at all as a topic, to just let yourself imagine more the actual people involved, just to appreciate the sentiment to it and the emotional landscape of it as much as the facts that we have today.
Anything you want to add, Kevin?
Yeah, Devon, that was really well said. But I was the one digging the graves. I think I have OCD. I'm not diagnosed, but I had to set up all these shots ahead of time before getting friends in, days before, to make sure that these graves fit in the frame of the photo, how high up we could actually get the camera, 12 feet on the ladder, or also just the curves of the graves, just making them even. There were so many hours that I spent just adjusting things just an inch to make it perfect. Of course, the graves back then, maybe they wouldn't be quite so precise. Maybe they would be though. Yeah,
they didn't have to worry about it fitting into a camera lens. So
in the camera lens, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And there's things you take into account, depth of field. So we obviously didn't dig it very deep. And I've been curious about this. Archaeologists, get in touch. Maybe Mags, you have an answer for this. How deep were graves typically during this period?
Okay, so that brings up a really interesting question, because that entirely depends on at what level would the ground surface have been, because the ground surface now is not the same height as it would have been back then. And what is the level of erosion and soil composition like in that given area? So I think it is really difficult to say for certain whether, I don't even know if they would have had a 6 feet under type kind of go to like we do. or whether it would entirely depend. I think
Because
there
how
might be
lazy
some.
your friends were, I think.
And I mean, I think it also like depends on the type of burial, right? Because if you're digging a mound, it doesn't have to be that deep because you're covering it with something above the ground instead of digging below. And the same if you're doing like a chamber burial, it doesn't necessarily have to be deep. So I guess it's a roundabout way of me saying I don't know.
Some of these graves that we're recreating have really large stones on them, and we just don't know if those stones were placed like out of respect, out of malice, or maybe just because it was maybe a shallow grave, and so it really helped to kind of keep things protected from that which still roams the earth. And yeah, it's hard to say.
Mm-hmm. But even things like the prone burials, for us, that feels very disrespectful. I know we've spoke about this, Max, with Brad Marshall and Emma Thompson, and there've been some really good episodes on the more like archaeological side, I guess, of the different burials across the Viking world. And this idea that, you know, if you put somebody in a coffin today face down, that instantly screams disrespect, that you didn't like this person. But that's not necessarily maybe the case for those that were buried in the Viking Age, and that's a kind of very thought-provoking thing.
Yeah, there are a lot of graves that we were researching for this book that have this vagueness about them where it's like, oh, your gut reaction is that feels so malicious, or they must have hated this person, or they want to disrespect this person, whether it's prone or rocks put on them, or there are weapons graves, and sometimes it feels pretty obvious that it would be like a respectful weapons grave if the weapon itself is valuable. But one of the graves that we depict in this book is a grave from Denmark where it's prone and there's a knife right next to the man and he has rocks on him, but he doesn't have any other belongings. And you want to jump in, Kevin?
I was just going to say that Emma Thompson and Brad, who were on recently, they were speaking about this grave. This is the grave from Bogavoy in Denmark.
Mm-hmm. Is that the one that were you the model for that one? Or do I remember that correctly?
Oh, that's my friend Ray. we have very similar hair though.
Oh, okay. Maybe I remember it wrong. I remember just looking at it then. Oh, what a flex. The prone ones I find really interesting because I wonder.
Yeah, because I think that brings up an interesting point, Devin, is that like, is that level of care counted in the amount of belongings that accompany the person regardless of the position they're in, or is the position somewhat is the thing that speaks to the amount of care or reverence taken? Like, or are we even using the right terminology to try to interpret these graves? Like, what are they even trying to do with the burials?
Yeah, that one is interesting. It's so bare except for this knife. Maybe he was wearing clothes, we don't know, but there aren't any other artifacts that are found to connote like, belt fittings or anything like that. So we portrayed him in very simple clothes in our book, but it's so hard to say. I think when there's many more grave goods, which we also go into the book, common grave goods and things, you would assume that there's more significance to this person. But then there are also instances where there might be many prone burials in a graveyard. What is that one? Is it in England that there are many?
Talking about Kopersvik in Sweden?
Oh yeah, that's where it's in a churchyard and there are many prone burials.
Yeah,
so
actually, this is Matthias Toplak wrote an article about this, and we quote it where we reference it in the book. So it's interesting. That was the last guest that you had on here, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so that one, it's not the outlier that they're prone. Mm-hmm. It's one of many that are prone. And so, and in a churchyard,
within the churchyard, they're not actually like cast out.
Yeah, so they're in what's it called? Sanctified earth. Consecrated ground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I wonder if
just different trends.
Yeah. But I wonder if it would be like not a negative is in a bad thing, like a negative is in the opposite. If they maybe weren't Christian, but they didn't know where else to put them, so maybe they were still pagan, so they put them
But then
the other way
they
up.
might not have been buried in consecrated ground, because there are, I can't bring any specifics to mind, but I do know of burial sites that like consecrated ground and very close to non-consecrated ground, and they're like happening simultaneously. So it's like, is it pagan versus Christian, or is it people who aren't deemed, fit to being consecrated? Like, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
But I think that
yeah.
So interesting.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, it's just so interesting because this is like the very last thing I encountered with the book. And I was reading one of Toplak's articles, and they proposed a scenario of maybe why we see this sort of thing where there's prone burials that are within a graveyard, within a churchyard, consecrated, treated with respect. And the last thing that I wrote on here was, there exists a compelling argument that this strange phenomenon is consciously intended burial rite, one connected to Christian ideas of piety and humility towards God. Perhaps this rite was reserved for individuals who died without being baptized and thus had to demonstrate abjection through the face-down burial position. That was really neat.
Yeah. So it could be you are Christian, or you show the intent, but you're not baptized yet, so you're not fully one of us. It's an interesting.
Because
theory.
what is a way to really show, respect, or that you humble yourself and make yourself kind of vulnerable? That is to throw yourself on your knees and throw your torso on the ground, or just fully flat pancake on the ground, right?
Yeah.
Which is something that we still use today, less popularly maybe, but
yeah. I do wonder if there's carefully treated graves that are like really definitely pagan, that are prone and like treated with care as well. I wonder what the trends look like for that.
Yeah, I wonder too. I'm not sure. I've been dumb enough to niche in on like one burial, so I'm really bad at trends.
Oh, what burial is that?
It's the Olsberg.
Oh, okay.
Just the coolest one.
But interestingly enough, we cannot tell you a single thing. I argue, could not tell you a single thing about the burial positions there, because someone was in there and started moving around the bones. So we have no idea. Like, we assume that they were placed on beds, but and we assume that they were in the burial chamber in the boat.
And the relationship between...
We have no idea.
Yeah, no idea. But there's so many ideas and notions of what they could be. But it's...
Yeah, we know that they were both well fed, so they were likely of a similar class. But that's pretty much all we can say.
Was it the younger woman was from elsewhere? Was it the younger one?
There is one test that indicates that she might have matrilineal genes from the Black Sea area, so like Persia-ish.
How long would you have to be well fed before a well fed shows up on a test?
It's when you're growing. So when you're a child, while your body is still developing.
Right. Because so you wouldn't be like we spoke obviously about Ibn Fadlan, and we spoke about the ritual killing and the way that maybe the slave girl was treated before and fed and drunk. So
that wouldn't be enough.
It couldn't be something like in the end. Towards the
because
end.
If you're malnourished as a child, or your diet is very like one note, that still shows up in your bones, regardless of how well and varied you eat as an adult, because that is kind of the foundational building blocks for the rest of your skeleton.
Oh, fascinating. So in the book, there was the one picture that stood out more than, or not stood out more, because I don't think necessarily it's my favorite, but the one that elicited a reaction was the one of the shroud. And I don't know why that is, because the others are
spooky.
Yeah, I guess it is, because all the other ones they're still, I don't know, I feel like seeing the dead body, the face would be more stark than not. Maybe subconsciously I know that they're not actually bodies, but there was just this thing about the one where it's all covered in shroud, but obviously it's tightened in all the necessary places, like around the neck, to give the shape of the body. And just that image was like, ooh, maybe kind of just as I was scrolling through, I was like, ooh, that one elicits a reaction at least.
I agree. And I love to hear that feedback, because I think we all kind of experienced something when we saw that photo, like, oh God, that's dark, and that really does something.
Devin, you did mention, like, when we were looking through photos to decide on for my grave, there's one where I'm on top of a shield and one where the shield is over top of me. And you were like, it's just so creepy when you're underneath the shield because you just can't see.
There's something, I think it's, classic imagination. What you imagine is much scarier sometimes, but.
Because this was the one that you meant. And again, I don't know if it's.
Spot on.
Maybe it's dehumanizing not being able to see the face, and that's what has that reaction.
I don't even know if it's dehumanizing, but it's like okay.
Yeah, I think it might be the opposite.
Yeah, it's not like uncanny valley, because that's like adjacent to what I'm thinking about, but not exactly it. But it's the not dehumanization, but it's the lack of individuality. You can't tell who it is, and it's kind of the same thing with the shroud, like, right? That it's like you can tell that there's a person there, but you can't see the actual person. You can just kind of see the outline. I
think you're more likely to impose people that you know in your life or other people you've heard of. It feels more personal when you can kind of fill it in with your own imagination.
Because they're literally faceless.
This is a way of us cheating and being able to use a model twice as well.
Hey, nice.
I would love to know why they would put somebody like in that crouched position versus just because, again, it's
maybe that's how they like to sleep.
Well, yeah, maybe, but it's that
maybe it's about being comfortable. I don't know.
It might also be they dug the grave and he's
too small.
He's a big, strong lad.
They thought they were digging it for your friend Kevin, but it was actually for you, and they had to crouch you in there.
He is probably not a foot shorter than me. I was exaggerating. But the grave that this one is based on, I do believe it was stone lined from Orkney, and maybe they didn't have enough big stones.
So they just it is that thing that we, looking back, try to give everything meaning. Like everything has to have some depth or intention to it. Well, maybe they were just a little bit lazy. Maybe they were like, I'm tired, I don't want to dig anymore. Let's just fit him in there however he fits. Maybe humans are humans, and I know some people who would do that today. So I've got to believe that there would be some people that would have done it back then as well, rather than it having this depth. But maybe it does have some deep meaning. But sometimes maybe things just are humans just not being bothered, or you say they don't have enough big stones.
It is interesting because if they were doing that, and I could see that, I think that, gosh, my friend from Ukraine was telling me about these graves in Ukraine where I think the bodies were sitting up, but that was determined to be just because the graves weren't big enough and there wasn't enough space, and they're like, this works. But this guy has a pretty nice sword. Like the sword that was actually buried with him is much nicer than one that's with me in the photo.
And there's also
other goods.
Vague hoard of kind of unidentifiable other metal objects that were maybe spearheads or something else. Nails.
Definitely a knife, maybe arrowheads, and there's a shield boss. And
just the fact that it's stone lined, because I don't think we appreciate the amount of effort. Well, you guys obviously do because you've done it.
Ray did it. Like, Ray, he's not short. Ray dug that. And
poor Ray. I feel sorry for Ray.
Good job. He won't listen to this.
Called out.
Hi, Ray.
But like the amount of effort that it takes, because if you really want something to be stone lined, not only do you have to do it, and it's like it can, you have to find the stones, but then you also have to make sure they like align in a way that pleases you and does whatever function you want it to do. And just from having tiled my hallway floor, which is like tiny, and this was like with modern tiles, with modern equipment, I lost my fucking mind. And these were ceramic tiles. And I'm like, Jesus, like doing this with stone, and they are like surprisingly big.
Yeah, some of these are a lot larger than the ones we use as well. And these stones we just found in our friend's yard. We're just like, these will work, and then we just try to fit them together. And he did a really good job of Tetrising it all together.
But even still, we weren't trying to just mess about with it ourselves. It was like, okay, this takes skill. So Kevin was very smart to use his friend that knows how to do this. And it's like one of those other reminders that there is a skill to everything involved with these burials, whether it's making a casket or stone lining. It's like, it would probably be a rare occasion where everyone tried to figure it out for the first time in their lives when one person dies, because people are dying often, and
all the time.
There are skills to all of these services that you would probably use in your community. And what we can portray in our book is definitely restricted to our budget and our skills. But zero budget, but one skill maybe. and
I feel like we had more than one skill.
Yeah, but it's something that you don't necessarily need a budget for. I guess the budget could be for the grave goods.
I mean,
for the
we
grave
didn't spend
itself,
additional money, but we definitely were spending money in this hobby. Anyone that's done this hobby knows that it takes money and time to have any of these goods or learn how to.
That made me think of something I was going to say earlier about the gentleman who was sat up with just the knife, and that I guess there might be a line of thinking that the less grave goods, the less people cared about this individual. Whereas maybe his family just didn't have much. He was poor, and I think it's probably worth remembering that just because they don't have a lot in there it probably just shows their social standing isn't important. It doesn't tell the love and care that their family had for them. It doesn't mean it's any less than somebody who was buried with the whole shebang. Like I think that's worth maybe thinking about and kind of
definitely. And with any of these more furnished graves where there are multiple weapons and actual signs of like belt fittings and the clothes that they would wear and shoes and all these things, it sometimes animals in these graves, that means that community could afford to sacrifice those things. Maybe not easily, but it just means that a choice was made where they could live without those really nice swords or really nice weapons. And when it is very bare and there's just one knife, we just don't really know what the context was, but it might have been a big sacrifice to lose that one knife out of honor, or maybe not. Maybe there was a lot more negative story around it. It's a mystery.
Emma Thompson was talking about how knives are the number one most consistent thing across male, female, and child graves from the period, which I found really interesting. And then on the last time they were on the podcast, they were talking about this grave P from Bogovoy, and they're saying that there's some really interesting research that they're about to drop soon. I'm really curious about what these new, I think it was genetics or some sort of archaeological science, that there's new research coming out about them soon. But in the book, I don't know if you got to this part, Dan, we created a narrative for each of our characters that we put in the ground. And it was a little disrespectful to Ulfer, who we named.
I didn't get a chance that far in, but I'm definitely going to sit down and read those.
Yeah, so for each grave we have a imaginative narrative that we accompanied with it, just to kind of paint a picture of what could have been the context, very loosely, just to give a story to it so people can get their own imagination going. But then we have in tandem our own report of how we made the grave, the archaeology that it's based on, the inclusion of grave goods based on what was found in the original grave. So we have kind of a story fictional version of each grave, and then the very real facts that we based it off of that you just can't actually really place a story on because there's just so much mystery. One of my favorite graves that we have in the book is an Icelandic one where it's a man and his dog, and it's like you immediately want to be touched by it, and like we all assume that it's a man and his pet. So we have a story to accompany that, but it could be very different from that. It's just hard to say.
Not me sitting here petting my dog as you're talking about it.
Yeah.
Who is the good boy or girl in the picture?
That is Moonshine. That's my dog.
Your dog, Moonshine.
Such a great name.
I don't know. Does she look like she's dead to you? It's kind of. Does it look like her head is down enough?
Yeah, she sat up. She's been a good girl. She's not acting. I think, but this could be also another example of why maybe the legs were bent, why somebody was prone, because I guess
you mean crouched.
Crouched, yeah. Because when you actually see the skeletons of an animal that's been put in there, you're just seeing the skeleton, and maybe we forget that animals are actually quite big and they need to find room for them when they're still fleshy beings. Especially some dogs are big, some horses are certainly big.
This is a very accurate representation of what it looks like in my bed every night, because it's really loud.
That is any dog owner. That is the love we have for our
Yep. Especially now that I have like the down feather winter duvet, he's like, "Fuck you, mom. The lower half of the duvet is mine." I want the fluffy feathers.
How large they are.
Yeah, they become the heaviest things in the known universe when it's sleeping time. They are. I don't understand how dogs become so heavy when they're asleep at the bottom of the bed. Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Dead weight.
But as a dog lover, obviously this picture struck me as well, because I'm like, oh, there's a little, there's a dog in there. It's very sweet. But then it opens up that question of, well, was the dog put in alive? Well, not alive, but was it killed to be put in there? Was it die before?
We have an answer for this one.
Yeah, this one, it was found that the dog had a cranial trauma to it, and so
that's sad now.
Yeah, so the dog seemed to be definitely dead in the grave, so not a live burial of the dog. Something to be glad for, but it's not certain whether the dog was killed to be put in the grave, or maybe the dog died first from some blunt trauma of another circumstance, and maybe the man followed the dog into the next life. Who knows? But I would think probably more likely the man died, and his community decided that they should go off to the next life together. It's so
nice.
It's so sweet. But there's also, sorry to get ahead of this, but something we talk about in the book is sometimes, maybe it's not always fair or appropriate to draw conclusions or point out coincidences, but this is one of a few graves where there's just an interesting coincidence. There's an Icelandic grave, and in one of the sagas, Njal saga, there is portrayed this relationship of a man, Gunnar, and his hound, his faithful hound, and they end up being buried together, or are they buried together? They attack the dog, and then his enemies slay him afterward, and it's just something that got our imaginations going, that maybe this contemporary story was being told at the same time that a very similar coincidental death was actually being treated, and it's just fascinating to be able to notice those things as you're going in through the archaeology part, but then also the kind of cultural research.
Absolutely.
I think we look through it through modern eyes, don't we? And for us,
I mean, we will always do that.
Yeah.
We can't separate ourselves from it.
But for us, it seems so barbaric to kill an animal, to put it in a grave with someone. But if you try to put yourself in the mindset of somebody who believes that this person is going to, it's not even belief at that point. It just is. The reality is, it's not that they believe this is going to happen. That is what happens. So the idea of putting these items in there, these goods, whether they're highly valuable or living animals, humans, animals, that there isn't that, oh, this is a bad thing. It's that this is only a good thing because the person that we love so dearly gets to have these things that they cherish in life with them. Also, they get to experience a better afterlife with them. The dog that's been killed to be put in there, it's dying temporarily. It's dying in the moment, but really it's going to be with its owner, the person. If you had, if obviously I have a connection with Rocco. I've had him for years now, and if I'm all he's known. I rescued him. He's like my best friend. We go everywhere together. So if I died, there is this idea that maybe the kindness is to, certainly if your idea is that there is an afterlife after, that the kindness is then to send him with me and not have him in pain and worry and upset and sadness himself of like, where have I gone? It's like, well, why don't we just send them together? We may as well. If we put them in the grave together, they're going to be together, they're going to go to the afterlife together, and that journey carries on. And it's putting yourself in a mindset of something that's different to how maybe we see it today, because we don't maybe believe the same things.
Yeah, I think it's important to let go of some of our modern sentiments about that kind of thing. Also, I will say that the analysis of the grave did show that the dog was probably very old age. So maybe, who knows if it was sickly or anything, but it's something. It's something at least. But yeah, I agree with you. It's
because I like kind of bringing that emotional core aspect into it, because that is something that is very lacking, I think, in a lot of archaeological research, because emotion is one of the hardest things to kind of prove.
Yeah, of course.
So naturally, in heavy quotes, we've tried not to impose emotions on past people, but the unfortunate side effect of that is that things are presented in a very kind of not sterile. Sanitized, but yeah, like sterile. Thank you. Like sterile way, where like there must have been a lot of emotions and thoughts and feelings going into all of this, regardless of whether it would be feelings and thoughts and emotions that we would relate to, like one-to-one.
I guess it's because you always have to speculate those things, don't you? There's no way. It's hard enough looking at the physical items we find and trying to figure out what they say, let alone them be like, well, what were they thinking and what did they feel? That's so impossible. But they're not void of emotion. They were people.
Yeah, something I think is interesting to think about as well is like the people that we're portraying and the kind of lives they have lived, but also just the people that are burying them, their community, like why they made certain choices. Because they're, at the end of the day, it's the community that makes the final call on what goes into a grave and how they're dealt with. There might have been requests and arrangements made beforehand, but ultimately the dead don't bury themselves. And so it speaks a lot to what the community was capable of. And I think about them like in some of our narratives that we make just to evoke kind of emotional, imaginative walk through it. We portray a person being buried by their mother or by their spouse. And this is information that we just don't have, but it's interesting to consider it. And it, yeah, I think it just makes you more in touch with the actual people that we're living, which I think is the goal for us, or one of our goals as living history enthusiasts or reenactors, is to just put ourselves in the minds of people that lived in the past, which is ultimately a great guessing game, but
Sure.
it's something that is such an important exercise in empathy that I think benefits us in relating to other people today. But it's not hard to do, and I think we try to be careful around the topic to say, like, disclaimer, we don't know. But at the end of the day, we're still humans, and 1,000 years ago is not that long ago when we've been walking this earth for so much longer. Like, some things stick in our core as humans when it comes to emotions around life and death. And I think there's something to be gained from feeling like you kind of do have the right to connect to people so long ago. Like, something does connect to us. We are so similar, as Kevin says in his intro to the book. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think doing those thought experiments I've experienced this myself. Like, if I allow myself to go there and just like, okay, I'm just gonna speculate, I'm just gonna like hypothesize, try to imagine what it could have been like, that allows you to open doors that you might not have considered otherwise. And if you allow yourself to use those doors, then you might actually view the material. Like me as an academic, if I allow myself to walk through those doors, then I might actually apply different perspectives to the material that shows me things that I wouldn't otherwise have considered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's so important with archaeology, is to not only bring in some emotions sometimes when it's appropriate, but just different perspectives. Like, we all have different emotional responses to these things, and I think, like, on a team of archaeologists, it's so nice to have a wide range of perspectives, so you all can have that input into just continuing following the clues and noticing new clues. Like, this is such a under researched thing I'm about to say, but I'm pulling something from my memory right now of something about
go.
How, like, something about ancient Roman hairstyles, I think, and how they like would have been made. And I think it was like a lot of like male archaeologists thinking about it and like looking at statues and how could it have possibly been made. And then it's like female women and hairdressers come in and they're like, okay, well, first of all, that's definitely a wig. Or first of all, those braids are definitely cemented down with this or that thing. And it's not a perfect like translation into what did happen in the past, but those lived experiences do
offers more insight. I actually did go down that rabbit hole very shallowly a few years ago, where I was asked to, on this like blog for curly haired people in Norway. I got in touch with them and they asked us if I had any historical perspectives on it. So I kind of did a little deep dive into it after I started treating my own curls, because no one else in my family has curls that they're aware of.
The curl cream, the curl butter.
Yes. So I started like looking into it and looking at, visual representations like the ones you were speaking about, like Roman hairstyles and stuff. And I started noticing, like, I can't say exactly what they've used, but I can tell that they are actually treating the curls, because if not, they would not have been curly in this way.
Just frizz.
Yeah, it would have just been frizz.
Yeah.
So there is something going into this.
Like out here, yeah.
Yeah, me too. I get like I have an actual lion's mane.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
Pretty sick.
Just frizz everywhere.
Yeah.
Kevin, is there anything you want to add to the I guess the emotion of the around the
well, Kevin had an interesting perspective. I know I'm totally jumping in and interrupting you already, but
so curious.
Just talking about like how much we contemplated death. I was part of the recreating and researching part, but Kevin was researching and drawing as well for so long. Like, the book is kind of half and half photography and illustrations. So I remember you saying before, Kevin, like, you had to interact with this grave topic for so long, and it kind of did something to you, and how did you get out of that?
Yeah, I was having nightmares.
Really?
I must be in the footsteps of a lot of other archaeologists out there who are looking at bones all the time. I was just looking at bones every night before I went to bed for months and months, and I was just having nightmares about it. And I think I freaked myself out just a little bit.
Oh,
But
wow.
I really was so in director mode a lot of the time that I was focused on the big picture. So I wasn't like having those emotional moments until we had the like time where I have to move somebody's hair and like it
Mhm.
really just touches you like so
Mhm.
profoundly. And then I'm just back up on top of the ladder, 12 feet above, taking photos, directing people, telling people to move things. So I had a very different experience than Devin, but I was in the grave for 2 of these as well. And that was really interesting, especially when there's somebody placing stones on you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's I can relate in a lot of the ways, like helping create the images. You're focused on doing it right and getting so many things right, but it's when you like step into the grave that is, you lay down and you close your eyes and you have to let other people place objects on you. And yeah, we put a big rock on Kevin.
And the other one, I was underneath of a shield.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what was going on. It was just dark. And people were just, I was like, trust the process.
But isn't that like a visceral, like weird visceral feeling? Because to a certain extent, like I would say that you guys have much more experience with this, but I was on just a little hike with some archaeologist colleagues of mine a few years ago while we were doing a burial dig. And we found this I think it was Bronze Age, like stone casket burial that is just like, it's just open in nature because it's just, they've just like it kind of just merges into the topography of the surrounding kind of area. But we were like, oh shit, this is a burial site. And but like
Did you get it?
I tried to find the photo, but I couldn't find it. I'll see if I can find it. But I got in the grave and I remember being like, this is weird, but really fun, but weird. So there's like one photo of me trying to be serious, and then there's another photo of me just not being able to keep straight face.
I've done the same thing out here in some of those Bronze Age kists in Scotland. There's
kist. Thank you.
You just gotta crouch down, all contracted, fetal position up.
Kevin, you said you had nightmares. Do you think that again shows our relation to death in the modern time? Because you know, you're looking at these what are potentially very beautiful, you know, rituals. These people that they love dearly, and they're going to a different place with the things that they love, and of course there's the sadness that they're gone, but there's a life after, presumably. That's what I would guess that they believe. So there's some sort of joy to it as well, I guess. If if you genuinely believe that they're going to a different place where they're going to be amongst past friends and rejoicing with people that they've lost and missed and not seen, there is a happiness to the sadness as well. But I guess that's been stripped away for a lot of people in the modern era, because I think, you know, modern religions are dying. People are starting to find maybe more pre-Christian pagan religions. Now there's a switch over, but for a long time, I guess like atheism and agnostics were big. So that kind of part of it was removed, and we are so removed. But here, from death.
Dan, I would just jump in and say that even though perhaps the lived experiences of the people, I don't know what your faith situation is, and you don't have to share unless you want to, but just speaking from my and Dan's perspective, I will say I think there are a lot more people of faith that have different thoughts about an afterlife or something adjacent to it than perhaps you and I do. So I would just be a little bit careful to generalize. But I do think that you're right, that there was this wave of agnosticism and atheism that perhaps created this dissync between life and death, that there was a very clear schism. But I think there are more people of faith than perhaps you and I expect there to be.
Yeah, maybe. And I think it changes as you go through your life. I'm more spiritual than I was when I was younger. But I think also we are very disconnected to death.
That's true. It's an industry now, though, right? Because like before, it wasn't. It was a task that you need to get done, so you wouldn't sit there with a rotting body. But now it is actually like a business.
Yeah, it's an odd one because you can see death or violent death so easily on Instagram if you follow the wrong account. You can see the most horrific things. But yet
no,
but our connection to just like the death of those around us and the animals that are in nature, we're so removed from it. People don't know, if you come across an animal that's died in the woods, a lot of people would freak out and be kind of spooked by that, even though it's such a natural thing. We eat so much meat, but yet it's packaged in a little polythene wrapped container that has a little label. It doesn't look like the animal. When somebody dies, they're taken away without you seeing them. They're put in a funeral home and then they're dressed. Maybe you have an open casket. Not many people do now. You could go and visit if you want. A lot of people don't. So you don't see them. They're put in the coffin. They're taken to the crematorium. This whole thing is just separated, where there's not that actual connection to what's happening. So I think then when we're faced with it, it's very different and very negative versus maybe the love and the beauty that it is. It is a very like grief. Death's very grief ridden anyway, isn't it? But that it seems to be very centric on that rather than maybe the celebration, which you see in some cultures.
Well, you also, if you're just looking at the like artistic media nowadays, it's treated as very tragic in a lot of films and movies, and we see even when it's like a noble death, a well-earned death in like hero movies, it's there's still so much somber tragedy around it. But we have accounts, or there are signs from archaeology like that point to feasts that happen around funerals. It's definitely, in Ibn Fadlan's accounts, it's like there's so much ceremony and ritual and kind of joy around it, and this like energetic fervor around it. I think that really gets people to celebrate and process it and see the continuation that death brings. But then there are also other graves where there's like signs of lots of broken pottery on the grave sites, or animal bones that were probably from some feast that happened. And that shows a relationship of people enjoying themselves, if you can say that, or at least people continuing connecting and making a shindig out of this event. Not just showing up and being sad, but like continuing life, cooking, feeding themselves, nourishing themselves. There's in Ibn Fadlan's accounts and in something like Beowulf, there are so many depictions of like people keening or screaming or singing or dancing. And yeah, I think it just shows that there is a lot of significance in the experience of sharing death together with your community. And it's hard to know the emotions that they might have felt back then. But if we don't often experience that nowadays, but we associate death with being tragic, and we know that there was a lot of ritual around death in the past, maybe we can assume that there were other emotions going on, like joy and happiness for the next life, or pride, or just connection.
Funnily enough, without given any spoilers, but again, a little bit of spoiler warning, this topic actually comes up in the second half of Bridgerton season 4. Very specifically. Unexpected.
I didn't think you would go with that. I think that, as you said earlier, Max, that spending time with the dead and the body would be very different than today. Like I said, if somebody dies, unless you're there, you don't see them. It's and then the next time you see them, they're in a coffin, and it's this grandiose thing, and they're carried down kind of the center of the church. And if it's in that setting, most of the funerals I've been to have been, and that's kind of it. Whereas if you're there and you're having to deal with the body, you're cleaning them, preparing them, digging the grave, placing them in it, just being around them, that allows for the grief to process maybe quicker and maybe naturally, but then also they're there, and that's got to be a very different experience to what we go through today. That's quite removed.
Yeah, there's more closure.
Yeah, I actually have.
Want to say something.
Yeah. Go ahead, you guys. You guys are guests.
Well, I was just going to say there are also, like it's mentioned in the sagas a lot, this idea that when you die, it's not like you become this ghost or you evaporate into thin air. It's like if someone returns from the grave, they look like a human and talk like a human and feel like a living human. So we know that there is definitely a different relationship to what happens if you die, or if you like feel the presence of a soul come back and still roam the earth. So I think there probably was a much more relatable feeling to your loved ones after they die. Like they don't just turn into dust, or there's a chance that not much of a change happens besides like the placement of their soul or where they wander around, perhaps.
I think sometimes they have a life of their own within a grave mound as well in some of the sagas.
There are indicators of that, yeah. So there are I would say well-founded hypotheses that some of, especially mounds and chamber burials, might have, especially when there's a ship or boat involved, because ship and boat can also be kind of acquainted, like there's this, speaking of kennings, there's this kind of association with that almost potentially being like a home of some sort, or that there's a relationship between the boats or ships and longhouses, and then that would be home. So perhaps people are at home in the burial.
We know they're being buried with food and lots of goods, not just like a sword because they're a cool warrior, but a lot of materials if the community can afford it.
And that's where the knives are actually really interesting, because heavy disclaimer here, I do not know whether all of these knives that are the most common kind of, I don't know what shape or size we're talking. That being said, just kind of jumping off that, knives were the most commonly used eating utensil.
It's the best tool to have in general. Like if you've ever done any kind of bushcraft or camping, it's like having a knife versus not having a knife.
Versatility.
Opens up all of your capabilities. Like it is so important. And it doesn't have to be, I think most of these knives are a couple inches long. Like they're not big knives. They're like small utility knives.
Maybe.
Yeah.
You'll not believe how sad I was to move to the UK and leave my big knives home. The limit is it's like 3 inches or less, and
that you can carry.
Carry. And bringing it on the plane, it had to be smaller than 2 inches or something like that. It was a really small number, and so the knife I brought is so tiny. It is like I still use it all the time, but it's like an inch. The blade. It's tiny.
That's actually funny, because with the Norwegian national costume, the bunad, it's very common to like have knives in the belts, regardless of whether or not you have a gown or a two-piece, more male-oriented thing. So especially for the female bunads that have like is essentially like a gown, it's very common to have knives with it. But then my sister and she has a knife for her bunad, and I can have one, but I just don't own one yet. But then when she was getting ready to celebrate our national holiday, once when it's very common to wear the bunad, we suddenly realized, wait, should I put on the knife? Because technically I will be, armed in a public space, and that is illegal. Am I allowed?
Don't they go? Are you dancing in that outfit as well? Don't they go flying?
Can. Okay. Yeah, you can, but the thing is, the knife would be attached to your belt in a sheath, so it wouldn't be just kind of floating about, and then they're sharp. So, but I think I don't remember what we figured out an answer to it, but I don't remember whether or not that was the case. I wonder if there's like some sort of, like, the police doesn't care that one day because it's like the national costume or whatever. But we were suddenly like, hang on a second, that is actually a weapon, because it's way more than an inch.
Well, But
Yeah,
that's
the
the
UK
thing.
is quite small, but if you're doing it you have a good reason. So like I'm part of a Regia Anglorum, which is an early medieval reenactment society. We all have like papers and like a little pamphlet that we have just in case we have to show a police officer. You carry this.
Yeah,
Very
I think it's
specific.
different if you're part of like a reenactment group, you can carry different things. I mean, I would like to think most police officers are smart enough to kind of use a bit of common sense, and I think, but this highlights this again changing idea around tools that because a knife is a tool. That's what it is, and always kind of was, that people would have had a knife to do all those small jobs that we now have X amount of other tools to do, to cut things, to, you got scissors for a specific type of cutting, and a bread knife and all these different things, whereas they would have had a utility knife that would have done so many different jobs that we probably don't, well, most people probably don't appreciate how important just a single like knife would have been, because we don't, and then it gets lumped in with that, that even being a weapon, when I think for the most part it's a tool, but it's just labeled as that now because we don't use them maybe as we used to, but some people use them in a bad way.
And now we have like a million different knives for a million different uses, right?
Yes, exactly. Someone in the chat says Scots have a knife in the kilt, because
that's so metal.
I wore a kilt to my prom, and they didn't, obviously it was like a faux knife design rather than having an actual knife, which I understand, but it was still part of that national kind of get up.
I love my emotional support knife. Even though it's very small, I love it.
Yeah, it is one of those things. Let's wrap this up, and then we'll do some questions in a little bit after. Yeah. Is there? Oh, I forgot. We have a question.
Oh shit!
So we've been trying to ask all our guests. Sometimes we forget. Sometimes we don't.
Good on you, Dan, for remembering.
But I was meant to ask you at the start, but you're just going to have to think fast and on the fly. So
you go first.
Basically, if you could go back to the Viking Age, we had a little teleporting machine. Is that right? Teleporting machine?
Yeah, time machine, something.
Time machine. That's the word I was looking for.
Also, you would be able to understand the language. You would have some sort of invisible skin that like you wouldn't get sick. Like all of those disclaimers out of the way. Yeah,
you're fine. You can just go back and learn one thing. Just there's one answer that you can go back to the Viking and be like, I'm just going to learn the answer to this question. Is there anything that jumps out that you've just always wanted to know, that you're like, did they do that? What was this? What was the purpose of that?
Oh, if you want like 10 seconds to think, I can actually say something that I thought about recently.
I have a very immediate knee-jerk reaction, and we have talked about this before, but there are so many things, but I'm dying to know what people did when they were experiencing their menstrual cycle and dealing with.
Oh,
is that what you were going to say?
No, but that's such a good point, because
I
remember I was talking to a botanist about this like literally 11 years ago, and I still haven't seen any papers on it, but she has a hypothesis that there is a certain type of moss that grows in Scandinavia that's very absorbent, and it won't do anything nasty to your below the belt area. So perhaps.
Yeah, that I mean, mosses, it can be found all over the place, and it grows.
In York, they were using them as toilet paper, sphagnum moss.
Yeah, it's like, why not? I think that's very likely. I've had conversations about this with so many people, and especially people that do reenactment. Like occasionally a reenactment event falls at the same time that you're experiencing that point where you have to deal with blood, and also hopefully do it in a sanitary way. And we have so many conveniences nowadays, but the hardcore reenactors like to try to experiment with it and see what can be done in maybe a more period way. No pun intended.
But it makes you think that there would have been something, because again, we've spoken here at length about the value of fabrics and clothing, whereas today we don't have that value because you can get a t-shirt
easily accessible.
Yeah, you can get a t-shirt for so cheap.
Yeah,
whereas
you're probably not wanting to stain your actual garments that you're wearing.
Exactly.
But
so it would
at
make
the
you
same
think
time, you might have period dedicated garments.
One dedicated little something or other. But also I actually spoke with my former boss about this a few years ago, and someone asked that same question at an event that she was doing. She's also an archaeologist, specialized in the Viking Age, and she had a really interesting point that have made me think a lot. And she was like, this is very much not like trying to generalize, but she pointed out that regardless of how physically active we are today, our lifestyle is a lot less physically active than it would have been back then. So she said it might be that generally speaking, periods perhaps weren't as heavy as they can be today, because your body's under much more physical, not necessarily stress, but it's being worked more. So while you absolutely did get your period, it might not be the bloodbath that it can be for some of us currently.
Yeah, and nutrition affects it so much. There are so many factors. That would be very interesting to study, to just kind of try to theorize what the average person's period was like. Like how long it lasted, how intense it was. If only we could know things like cramps or other things. If we could just know that about so many different eras of history, it would probably tell us so much about the past, but also about what people deal with nowadays and how nutrition and lifestyle affects modern periods. That is definitely something that comes to mind. I have so many other nitty gritty little how did they do this thing with the textile and what did they use to dye this and that? But yeah, that's my answer.
That was a good one.
Okay. Good luck getting out of the time machine and finding that out, Devon. I don't know how you're going to approach that with some people.
No, make
that
sure
you just
go
come
when
across.
you have your period, and then just go up to someone and go, "Oh shit, I'm on my period," or you just kind of describe it, and they're like, "Oh, we'll take care of you." You know, the way that women do when someone is on their period.
Yeah. Nice. Kevin, what have you got for us?
I have a lot of kind of hilarious ones that I came up with in that time, but I think that I'm landing on one. What is the hangover cure? I went to a long haul for 12th night this past winter, and I had the worst hangover of my entire life because there was no water around.
Oh, no.
I was just drinking ale and cider all night long, and I woke up in a smoky long haul. I slept next to the fire.
Maybe that's why they were so violent.
Horrible. What did they do?
Maybe they were just constantly hungover. Maybe that's
upset.
why,
Yeah, they're upset.
They were just not having a good time.
Yeah, I'd love to know. I wonder how drunk they actually got as well, because I imagine the liquor was much.
We did an episode on this.
Dan. With Simon Trafford.
Mead is oftentimes more like 4 or 5%. It's much more diluted than what we think of.
Same with beers, and obviously they wouldn't be spirits. You're not gonna have
imagine how
40%.
stoked they would be if they could get their hands on our alcohol selections.
Like they would be.
Imagine a Viking on absinthe.
There would be some poison. Oh, don't take that back with you. All right, let's wrap up the main show, and then we'll just do a little bit extra. So if you want to hear more from our lovely guests, head over to Patreon.com/Nordic Mythology Podcast, and we'll delve a little bit deeper. Where can people find the two of you? The book, when does it come out? And I guess where can they get the book, and obviously then follow either of you or both of you?
The book is available for pre-order now. And
Nice.
you can buy the actual physical copy. It'll ship faster very, very soon, probably within a matter of weeks, but it's available
In
for
March.
pre-order. Yeah, so you'll get it in March or soon after. But if you
It is
pre-order
officially
now,
March.
oh
Oh,
my
the end of
God.
this month.
Yeah. But you can pre-order it, and that makes us very happy because it makes us feel good and like we did something. But you can also wait when it's already printed. But yeah, you can head over to hylder.com, hyldyr.com. They're the publishing house. They're an amazing, small, independent, experimental book publishing company, unlike any other thing out there. Like, this is your small, like, local, as small and intentional as it gets, and they mix artists, archaeologists, scholars, and people like us. And yeah, they have
No
lots of
AI.
no
AI, yeah.
AI.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where you can find our book. And yeah, we're on Instagram as well.
What's your Instagram?
At what?
What's your Instagram?
Satinitas, Satinitas. It's just my Instagram page where I post things about experimental archaeology occasionally, or history things.
Mhm.
And Kevin has his where he posts amazing photography and his projects.
And that is Archaic Growth on Instagram. ARCHAICGROWTH.
Wonderful.
And Archaic Growth is also his project where he does his incredible illustrations through, and you can find all his art. I almost wore my t-shirt today, but then it was already stinky. But I have
The
an
one you made
amazing...
looks really good, though.
Thanks. Yeah, I just need Archaic Growth art printed on this kind of thing now.
Yeah.
Don't mix it.
Wonderful. Yeah, go and give them both a follow. Get the book. The book is stunning. It is a very,
It's
very
so pretty.
beautiful.
Thanks, guys.
I've seen, even before we booked this, I'd seen like the pictures that you'd be posting as promo, and every time I saw one on Instagram, I was like, that's a really nice picture, and it is striking because you're not used to seeing kind of this people laying in these graves. So do go and get it. The information in there is great, along with, like I said, that it's very thought provoking as you work through it. I've not got through it all yet, but I'm working through it, and it definitely, you have these moments of just thinking, and as many it raises as many questions as it answers. And
yeah, that's
exactly.
That's inevitable.
Mm-hmm. Mags, where can people find you?
Find me on Instagram at Archeomags, Archeo with a K.
Perfect. And for me, it's Daniel_Firehound1, Horns Voting for the Business, and then Nordic Mythology podcast across the board. Go and check out on YouTube. You can see our lovely faces and anything that we pull up, and hit the little subscribe button as well.
And also, as a little tidbit to join the Patreon, I found the pictures of me laying down in a barrel. So if you want to see that, you can sign up to be a patron. So I'll show them afterwards.
Yeah, join it. You get access to our Discord, our lovely little Discord with all the lovely people, and it's a nice little community over there. So
I'm in it.
Go and do that. You are.
Yeah.
I've been lurking for years, man.
I know. I saw you pop up today. I was like, "What? Wait a minute." So yeah, nice.
Coffee.